Welcome back to the Stone Age Workshop series. So far I have used flint, fungus and wood to light fires. I have built an oven using clay, sand and grass, and a smoking basket from split hazel and tree bark for preserving food. In this episode I'll take waste deer and sheep skins and using fat and smoke transform them into lightweight, breathable buckskin for making clothes and shoes. I'll also tan leather with tree bark to craft the tools, weapons and equipment I'll need for my attempt to cross the Irish Sea. So 7 hides, all done, silky soft, incredible material, absolutely love it. All variety of different things visible like that, which I suspect is a scar. Often on their backs, near their sort of bums, they've got these scar patches, I suspect from going under barbed wire fences. One of the challenges with filming in the woods is figuring out how to keep all my camera gear charged. Jackery has kindly supported this video, and I've been using their Explorer 2000 V2 to keep everything running. The Explorer 2000 V2 is a large capacity power station, but it's designed with a foldable handle, so it's actually very convenient to carry around when I'm moving between spots. Out here under the trees, solar panels don't always get enough direct sunlight, so I usually just charge it fully at home before heading out. It goes from 0 to 80% charge in just over an hour and reaches a full charge in about 1 hour and 42 minutes. With a chunky 2042 watt-hours of capacity and 6 output ports, it keeps my drone, phone, camera and lights powered for days. Even if you only use it once in a while, you can leave it charged and it will only lose a tiny bit of power over the course of a whole year, so whenever you need it, it's ready to go. Whether you're working off-grid or just want a dependable backup at home, the Explorer 2000 V2 is a solid solution. I'll leave a discount link from Jackery in the description. There's not much smoke coming through, but there is some. I think it is penetrating through the buckskin because when you smell it, it smells like gently of caramel, like sort of burnt caramel. So it is coming through. Hopefully that does the trick. I'm really pleased with how these buckskins have turned out, soft, supple and with the feel of a luxury fabric. Later in this series I'll cut and stitch them into clothes and shoes using sinew thread. But before we get there, let's explore another ancient technique our ancestors used to transform raw hides into a stable and useful material, tanning with tree bark to make leather. Later in this series, this leather will be made into belts, laces, thongs, equipment and weapons. But I'll also need something warm for the winter months, so now I'm going to tan 2 sheepskins that were headed to landfill and turn them into soft, smoked hides. In the next episode, I will use the buckskins and barktown leather to make lightweight, breathable clothes and shoes. I will also transform the sheepskins into a warm poncho that can convert into a comfortable sleeping mat for my attempt to cross the Irish Sea.